where their consciousness is It's Stephanie, and today I wanted to do a video about books that got me into science fiction, which when I started this channel was a genre I flat out said I did not like. So what changed? And looking into it, I think it was definitely that I read some books that were in genres that I enjoyed and had elements of science fiction, and it got me to the point where I realized that I enjoyed those elements. And so because of that, a lot of the books I'm going to talk about would not be classified as science fiction, but they had enough, or they played with enough of the themes in science fiction, which I will get into, which I think really worked for me. So the first book I want to talk about is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguru. This takes place in an alternate 90s England, and it's about 3 children at a boarding school and those 3 children growing into adults. And unfortunately with this book, I can't really even talk about what the science fiction element is because it's one of those books you have to go into blind. I can tell you what I really loved about this story is the idea that this what if concept was explored, and that within the story we explore kind of the ethics and the fallout and how some people would be affected by this what if it was implemented, and if this was just the way society was. And I found that absolutely fascinating, and I felt like the book had such emotional weight and resonance. And I realized that's me speaking in these really vague terms because that's a book I can't say too much about. The next book I want to talk about is And Again by Jessica Chiarella. And in this book, 4 individuals win a lottery of sorts. These 4 individuals have been diagnosed with terminal illnesses, and because of this lottery, they win the chance to be a part of this experimental procedure where their consciousness is transferred into a new version of their body, like their exact body, but completely unblemished. So if they had tattoos or piercings before, this new body does not. If they had burns or scars or calluses, you know, this body does not have them. So these 4 individuals have that procedure done, and then throughout the book they have to meet for a group meeting to talk about how their life has changed and how they're integrating. And obviously this is the first group that has qualified for this procedure, so they want to see if there are any side effects or how people are adjusting to their lives and their new bodies. And this book was very fascinating. I would say if you're like a hardcore science fiction person, this probably wouldn't work for you, because I will say this one is very light on the science or how it works or how this came about, and instead it was very character focused. So for example, one of the people that won the lottery, she used to be an artist, and now in this new body she finds that she can't quite hold a paintbrush the same way. She doesn't have the same hand-eye coordination when it comes to producing her art that she did before, which was, I thought, really interesting to explore. But as interesting as that was, I think I wanted a little more of the science. So then a book I picked up on NetGalley right on the heels of And Again was The Many Lives of Katherine by Emma Geen. And this follows a 17-year-old girl that works for a corporation that focuses on jumping consciousness into animals. So the lab has their own animals that are very lifelike, and the jumpers or the controllers, you know, go to the station and in their consciousness control this animal. And our main character is 17 years old, but she's been doing it for 7 years, which in the company is kind of too long to be doing this, because as you see in the novel, she has a really hard time fitting in with humans and communicating in a human way because she has spent so much time as different animals. So she will, you know, bare her teeth as a sign of aggression, or like hiss at people. So we start to follow Katherine, and I really liked the chapters that we follow Katherine as another animal. I thought those scenes were very well written. Yeah, this book was very fascinating, and also I don't think someone that says they don't like sci-fi would pick up. And the next book I want to talk about was also one that is kind of a crossover, so this was like a sci-fi thriller, and that was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is about a man who lives in Chicago. He is kidnapped, and when he wakes up, the home that he wakes up to is not his home. This was great. I would definitely recommend this to people who like thrillers or like really fast-paced reads. The science fiction element, which of course is a surprise that I'm not going to spoil for you, was very fascinating and very interesting, and at times a little confusing. I really enjoyed this book. I blazed right through it. I think definitely if you're looking for an entryway into a genre, I would say one way to do that is to look for things that are genre bending and that take one of the genres that you usually like and have a hint of the other genre that you want to get into. I found that that is something that really works for me. The next book I want to talk about is a book series that I picked up this year and quickly became obsessed with. The series is The Themis Files by Sylvain Neuvel. The first book is Sleeping Giants, and if you do pick these up, I highly suggest doing them on audio. So Sleeping Giants starts when a girl is riding her bike in South Dakota and she falls into a ditch. And in that ditch is a giant metal hand. And when they find her, they realize that this is no ordinary giant metal hand, because this is not metal that is found anywhere on Earth. So anyway, fast forward. And that little girl is one of the nation's leading physicists, and she is leading a team of scientists to find the rest of the parts to this statue. And this statue ends up being a robot. Do we maybe find other robots? I loved this story. This story is, I mean, this series is called The Themis Files, so each chapter is like file 7741. And it's like an interview transcript or like a recording of something that went on, or news reports. So if you like kind of alternate storytelling methods like I do, this was very fun to read. And then the audiobook has a full cast, which was amazing. I think what I enjoyed about Sleeping Giants was the consequences that were explored, and like, what if there really were alien robot parts scattered around the globe? Would we have a duty to tell the world what we're doing? Like, would this be a weapon? How would other people react to us? What can it do? And I loved answering all these questions and the politics of it and how this would play out on a global scale, which I thought was done really well. And of course, like I mentioned, I loved the storytelling, I loved the characters. So again, I absolutely fell in love with this series. And so like looking through these books, I kind of thought like, oh, I have a very set kind of science fiction that I like, but I wanted to try something else. And I kind of thought that a space opera might be a little too intimidating for me. And if you don't know, as someone who like is new to science fiction, I'm giving you like a very dumbed down version of what a space opera is, but you know, takes place in space and deals with, you know, different planets and different races and space travel. And I kind of thought that maybe would be a little too much for me, but I decided to give this book a try because I saw a lot of people that read widely across genres enjoy it. So like not just people who only read science fiction and are like hardcore science fiction readers. And so I figured that would be a good place to start for me if I wanted to do a space opera. And I was right. This was, of course, Becky Chambers' The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is #1 in the Wayfarer series. And I think it was definitely a good choice for someone like me who is new to the genre. Was a good way to try out a kind of a space opera setting. So in this book, we are following the crew of a ship known as the Wayfarer that builds wormholes so that people can travel easier through space. And I loved this book. I think what made this book so readable for me was the characters. Becky Chambers did a great job writing these characters and making them feel real. And so like within the spaceship, there was many different types of beings and aliens. It was very fascinating to see them interact and to see how Becky Chambers described, you know, the different customs of each different planets and how they interacted and how they looked. And I really enjoyed this. I am currently in the middle of reading A Closed and Common Orbit, which is its sequel. So obviously it went really well and I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to continuing on with the series. So anyway, that is what I have for books that got me into the genre. I am always up for recommendations, so if you have seen this video and think, hey, like if you liked this in this book, you would probably like this book in the genre, you know, please let me know in the comments. I am always open to recommendations. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye!